There it is, gang, the address. My fabulous record label, TPOS, P.O. Box 3626, Newtown, Connecticut, 06470. That's where I go every single day. Me, Malcolm Tent, your host of Tent Talks Tunes. I go there every single day to visit my campsite and see what's coming in the mailbox for a friendly old avuncular vlog host such as myself. Hello, Genevieve Michaud. Thanks for tuning in. Always great to see ya virtually. And looking forward to when we can hang out and watch some cheap Japanese and or Korean monster movies. Ooh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. You guessed it. You saw the address. You see my pretty pate. You know it's me, Malcolm Tent, and this is indeed Tent Talks Tunes. Let's talk about some of the great mail I've gotten this week. Oh, Lord have mercy. The first thing that I'm very happy to report that arrived at P.O. Box 3626 was the latest issue of Night of the Bloody Tapes, an all VHS review fanzine. My good friend Artie down in San Antonio, Texas puts this out. It's reviews of cheesy, sleazy, exploitative VHSs. And this stuff is hilarious. We've got Blast Fighter, Army of One, Black Dog. Oh my gosh, what else? We got Captain Ron, Collateral, all kinds of like really just awful, terrible movies that went straight to VHS, and they're all reviewed in Night of the Bloody Tapes. So thank you, Artie, for sending me that. And speaking of Texas, my pal Jason down in Texas, he's got me pegged, man. Jason, he knows exactly what it takes to make Malcolm Tent happy. He sent me a big old care package, the constituents of which included one 1947 Roosevelt Dime. The Roosevelt Dime is possibly the ugliest United States coin ever minted, second only to the Eisenhower dollar. The Eisenhower dollar is one excruciatingly ugly-ass coin. The Franklin Delano Roosevelt Dime comes in a pretty close second, but a specimen made in 1947 and minted in 90% silver actually is a little bit less repulsive. Even the that horrible portrait by John R. Cynic, I'm going to cram it right into the camera, and you guys have seen it before, but have you ever looked at it critically, really, and seen just how ugly that design is? Purely functional, really hideous. John R. Cynic, if you're out there, I'd like to think you could have done better than that. But Jason sent me one of those. That's pretty neat. He also has me completely pegged. Inside of an empty cassette case were Kiss thingies, including this very hilarious offer from the Kiss Army. Recruit 3 friends into the Kiss Army and receive a surprise gift. Wow, you mean all I have to do is go around the neighborhood and get 3 of my friends to pony up money to join the Kiss Army, and you'll send me a surprise gift? Wow. This actually probably was the surprise gift. A little basic postage stamp sized portrait of the Catman. But there's also Ace and Chaim Witz and Stanley Eisen. Doesn't matter how you look at him, it's still Stanley Eisen. So that's cool. That's Kiss. I love that. And also in the same package, this really, really put a torpedo into any blues I might have been suffering on a given day. You want to talk about the only sport that matters besides coin collecting? Dude, how about this? 1970s professional wrestling, as documented in fine magazines such as Wrestling Monthly, Wrestling Review. I've got them in plastic bags already. Check that out. Wrestling Annual 1973. Oh, man. This is right before I got into professional wrestling. I discovered professional wrestling sometime around the summer of 1975 and just dived into it and have never dived out of it, really. So these were the magazines that I wished I could have had when I was just getting into professional wrestling and going down to the drugstore in my neighborhood to buy the latest wrestling magazines. These were just a little bit old. They were impossible to find. I thought they were like the rarest things in the world because you couldn't find a back issue of the Wrestling Annual at the local dime store. So here they are, thanks to Jason. Thanks, Jason. I appreciate it immensely. I'm going to test the very limits of my literacy by reading those wrestling magazines. I'm also going to mention that my good pal Mark Robinson, who's got an awesome label called Ponk Media, sent me the cassette version of the Gigi Allen Carnival of Excess album. That's Gigi's jug band music, basically. I released the LP version. It is, of course, in print and available on Discogs and eBay. But Mark did it on cassette, and wouldn't you know, he stuck in a little bonus extra. Imagine finding all this in 1 week in your mailbox. He put a Kiss trading card in with it. This Space Ace in action on the Love Gun tour by the looks of it. That's a lot of great cheesy Kiss ephemera to get in 1 week. I'm quivering with excitement. Yes! This is going to find a proud place on my pretty shelf in my kitchen. Thank you, Mark. I know, Mark, you don't go near the internet, but somehow, somewhere, my gratitude to you will make its way to you. Probably in the form of the big package I'm sending you in a couple of days. And the other event that I want to make a little note of, which is Shane Hansen, the former drummer of Broken Talent, wants to know if I've ever cleaned dirty coins with Taco Bell sauce. No, I have not. Shane, maybe you'll be kind enough to post for our viewers what the hell you're talking about. To Shane and his absurdist sense of humor. Shane Hansen, BTW, is the guy who drew this Broken Talent flyer, which hangs behind me. That's an original Broken Talent flyer from the last show we ever played, opening up for Raw Power and the Dead Kennedys at the Cameo Theater in Miami Beach in 1985. Shane Hansen, ladies and gentlemen. Give him a big round of applause. Give him a big hand. Maybe give him a big hand right across the kisser. Maybe that's what he's needed all these years. Oh my goodness, I'm a funny guy. I'm a very funny guy. So yesterday was the release date of the brand new album by my space rock noise band Ultra Bunny. We have a new album out. It's called Land of Steady Rabbits. It was recorded on tour in the Deep South. Gigs from Macon, Georgia, Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, New Brunswick, New Jersey. Maybe I'm just reading that wrong. I am reading it wrong. These are from gigs in Hamtramck, Michigan, Cleveland, Ohio, Kent, Ohio. I got New Brunswick right. Brooklyn, New York, and somewhere else that I just can't read at all. But it's out officially. You can get it on Bandcamp. Look up Ultra Bunny, Land of Steady Rabbits on Bandcamp. Name your price. Download it. Make us happy. If you like physical media, I've got them on CD and cassette. 8-track coming soon, I promise. Also available on Discogs and eBay. All right, gang, enough of the self-service. Let's get down to brass tacks, shall we? Let's talk about the reason we're here on Tent Talks Tunes, and that is the Broken Talent Tour Diary from 1985. Ooh. Started reading from it last week, and it was an awful lot of fun. As usual, I thought that I could knock the whole thing off in one reading, but nah. Once the stories start coming, they keep coming, and they last a lot longer than you would think. I want to dedicate this to my pal Mike McGonigal. He's the publisher of Chemical Imbalance, and he was posting on social media that he's in the hospital right now with some problems. So, Mike, I fully expect you to get well as soon as possible. I'll be peeved if you don't. So get it together. And if you're watching, thank you for doing Chemical Imbalance and Yeti and Maggot Brain and all the great things you've done and will continue to do in the service of rock journalism. That's an order. So yeah, Chemical Imbalance, issue number 1, featuring a Broken Talent Tour Diary. July of 1985. Me and my three friends, Shane Hansen, Big Santo, and Marky Awesome, all piled into my 1972 Dodge Polara and hit the road north. And when I left off last week, we had made it as far as Albany, New York, where we're under much duress and stress and borderline humiliation. We got to open up for Black Flag and St. Vitus. Okay, that was the apogee of our tour. Got as far north as Albany. And after Albany, there's nowhere to go but down. So let us continue now with the tour diary. I read from page 1 last week. Page 2 this week. Let's see how far we get. Excuse me. All right, here we go. Excuse me, guys. I don't know why it is. I always get really dry and raspy when I do these things. I think it's because I'm trying to project my voice too hard into the camera. I need to just relax and let it pick me up. I know it will. But since James Brown died, I'm the hardest working man in showbiz, so I gotta live up to it. All right, here we go, gang. The moment you've been waiting for. We played twice at CBGB's, and now it seems that we are loved in New York. Hello, Johnny Stiff. If you do not play a Sunday in Atlanta, then do play a Sunday at CBGB. We were in New York for a week, and it seemed like the scene was very coherent, hip, and happening. Yes, some asshole skinheads exist there, but don't they everywhere? They didn't seem to be nearly the problem that everyone says they are. Hey, we saw the Bad Brains reunion gig. Marky and Santo thought they ripped, but I thought they ripped off. I mean, $10 for a 35-minute sloppy set does not make it. Not even in New York, the most expensive city on earth. And here's a rundown of New York City prices as of July 1985. Can of Coke from a machine, 70 cents. A gallon of regular gas, 132.9. McDonald's hamburger, 90 cents. Brooklyn Bridge toll, $2. I must be wrong about that. In fact, I know I was, because the Brooklyn Bridge is toll free. I think I meant the George Washington. $2! Oh my God. Parking space, $172 a month. Phone call, 8 cents each, local. Watermelon, $8. If you're in New York and you want a watermelon, have the folks back home mail you one. It's cheaper. In New York, I stayed with Ted Gottfried, formerly of Open fame, and Santo and Marky stayed with Carmen and Elizabeth, formerly of Morbid Opera fame. There are about 20 people from the South Florida scene in New York. Weird. But not weird when you compare New York to Miami. Well, there's an awful lot to cover in 1 or 2 paragraphs about New York. Holy smoke. Now, I did mention earlier last week who we played with in New York. We actually did 2 weekends in a row at CBGB. And I was told at the time that either had never happened before or was very rare, especially for a touring band. I'm not really sure. But that's what they told us at the time. The first day we played there was New York City, CBGB, blah, blah, blah. July 14th with The Freeze, Mental Abuse, and the Crumbsuckers. The week after, on the 21st, we played with Token Entry, Cro-Mags, and Iron Fist, who are from Minneapolis. And the way that happened explains why I gave the big shout out to Johnny Stiff when I said, hello, Johnny Stiff. Johnny Stiff was the guy who booked the shows. I don't know if he booked all the shows at CBGB, if he booked all the hardcore matinees, but he booked the shows at CB's the weekends that we were going up there. And he was the guy who I'm pretty sure had the scene report in Maximum Rock and Roll, who I wrote to and asked if we could play. And he said yes. And so we went up there on July 14th after a disastrous gig at a place called the Anthrax in Stamford, Connecticut. Boy, howdy, all right? And this is just to give you some perspective. July 12th, we played in Albany at the VFW Hall with Black Flag, etc. And the next day, zipped on down to Stamford to play with the Violators and the Vampire Lesbos. Basically, the Stamford Anthrax is one of those completely legendary venues. In fact, any iteration of the Anthrax, whether it was in Stamford or Norwalk, is a justifiably legendary all-ages venue. But at the time we played there, I swore I would never go back to the Anthrax ever again. And I would never go back to Connecticut ever again. I said, this place sucks. You gotta be kidding me. First reason was Connecticut was, like I just said in New York, incredibly expensive. I couldn't believe how expensive everything was in Connecticut. Like, if you could go to the diner or a restaurant, because we didn't really have diners in South Florida, but you could go to like a restaurant and get, you know, like a plate of breakfast for, 99 cents in Florida, it cost $1.50 in Connecticut, and gas was more expensive and everything was more expensive. So right away I was kind of taken aback by that. The venue itself was in the basement of this art gallery in Stamford, and the ceiling was about that high. When you're standing on stage, there was very little clearance when you played. I, of course, was not aware of that, so when we're playing our set, I did a dramatic rock and roll leap and went BAM! Right on a nice hard wooden ceiling beam that was just a few inches above my head. So I cracked my head on the ceiling, and I'm just like, ugh, seeing stars. I mentioned something about, to quote, asshole skinheads in New York. And you got to remember when I wrote that, I was really pissy and angry. I know many folks who consider themselves to be skinheads, and they're good people, and I'm friends with them, and I like them. We get along just fine. At the time, what did I know? I'm just some dumb punk from Florida. I didn't know anything. I knew it was kind of de rigueur to not like skinheads. So at the time, that's what my opinion was. And it was kind of backed up by some skins who showed up at the gig at the Anthrax in Stamford. And this was the first night that we decided to dress up in wild stage clothes, because we had this like trunk or a suitcase full of really wild like paisley shirts and colorful pants and ugly polyester, and we hadn't really busted any of that out until Stamford, because we got there really early and we were just kind of hanging out. We had nothing to do, so we were like, oh, why don't we break out the trunk of funny clothes and put them on tonight. So there's actually a picture of me from behind the Anthrax where I'm wearing this wacky hairnet and a paisley shirt, and I've got this ridiculous stuffed cow, Randy Dandy, the cow of disease we called him. It was this ridiculous, horrible stuffed cow made out of goat skin. And we sold these things at the import company I worked at back in Florida. And this was like not only a ridiculous stuffed cow made out of goat skin that had pink dye all over it, I think by accident. I'd fished it out of the garbage at this place because it was so ugly, and it was pink, and it was made out of goat skin, and it smelled bad. So Randy Dandy was like our mascot for a while. So we broke out old Randy Dandy, the cow of disease, and we're all dressed up funny, and we're hanging out, and this skinhead girl comes up to me, and mind you, we were some scraggly-looking, long-haired, frowsy, scrawny, pale punk rock people from Florida, dressed very weird. And she comes up to me and says, "Take that fucking thing off your head," and like reaches out and grabs the net and tries to pull it off my head, along with a big handful of my hair. And I'd never met this girl before. I didn't know who she was, but she was from Connecticut. She was a Connecticut skinhead, and there was no need for her to do that. So right off the bat, I had a very negative impression of Connecticut, Connecticut skins, and Connecticut in general. I don't even know who that girl was. I never saw her again or any of the people she was with, so they probably weren't even into the music. I have no idea. But that was like a very bad, negative first impression. And so by this point, we were carrying around this ancient drum set, and I told the story of how we acquired that thing last week on Tent Talks Tunes. So we're a bunch of raggedy dudes with this raggedy old drum set that doesn't have cymbals. Okay, we've advanced to the point where we've got drums for the first time on this tour, but no cymbals. So instead of having to ask every band or the promoter if they can supply us with drums, now we just need cymbals. So we asked this band, the Vampire Lesbos, if we can borrow their cymbals. They say, sure, you can borrow our cymbals. Great. So at this time, we're in the most expensive place I've ever been in my entire life. This is before New York by one day. I've been attacked by a skinhead girl, and you know, there's basically nobody there, and blah, 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 whatever. We play our set. I crack my head on the ceiling. We play the set. We were okay. We were like fair to middling that night, I think. Excuse me. The other bands play. The Vampire Lesbos play their set. They were from Seattle. They played their set. At the end of the night, it's time to settle up and everything, and I give credit to the Sheridan brothers. Everybody knows the Anthrax knows that it's all about the Sean Sheridan and the Brian Sheridan, the Sheridan brothers who ran that place. They treated us very well. They, in spite of the very few people who were there, they paid us. And when the word got back to them that we had nowhere to stay that night and we were probably going to sleep in the car in the parking lot, they invited us to sleep on the floor of the club. They went above and beyond. But you got to remember, at this time, I was young, snotty, pissed off, and full of piss, basically. Piss and vinegar. So I got so sick after sleeping on the floor of the Anthrax. It was your typical nightclub floor, you know. It was gross. It was disgusting. I got so sick after sleeping on that bare floor that night. We had breakfast the next day, and it was expensive. We filled up the 1972 Dodge, and it was expensive. And the Vampire Lesbos said, hey, we let you borrow our cymbals, but look, this cymbal's got a big crack in it. You got to pay us $20. And we were so young and naive and green that we went ahead and paid, knowing, you know, and now I know full well that cymbal was cracked before they let us borrow it, or even if it had somehow miraculously cracked while Shane was playing it during our set, it's because the cymbal had a fault in it already and was going to crack regardless. So they scammed us on $20. I mean, who knows? Maybe they legitimately thought that we cracked their cymbal. Maybe, maybe not. The way it seemed to me at the time was that they scammed us. So we gotten scammed. I'd cracked my head on the beam. I was attacked by a skinhead girl. Gas was expensive. Food was expensive. I was sick as a dog from the floor of this club. And I said, Connecticut sucks. I'm never coming back to Connecticut again. Let us now drink a toast to life's little ironies. Bravo for life's little ironies. He said, drinking from a flask of Connecticut tap water. You know, and it's really funny as I tell this story right now, and I go through all those circumstances. It seems like nothing. You know, it seems like nothing. Everything that happened at the Anthrax that night. But at the time, it seemed like a really big deal. You know, it really seemed crucial that all this stuff had happened to us. So I just hated Connecticut. I just couldn't imagine ever coming back to this place. Ho-ho! Connecticut is very good to me. Me llamo Connecticut. This is my stop. I do not see myself living anywhere other than Connecticut. Again, bravo for life's little ironies. Let's take a brief second to scroll down and see who's tuned in here. And, oh, yes, we got lots of commenting going on here. Oh, yes, all kinds of people. Oh, yes. Cool. Hello, Ray and Murray Gelman from Tucson, Arizona, for tuning in. All right, so that was my first ever experience with Connecticut, and I hated it. I hated it. I hated it. I was sick, and now it's time to go into the belly of the beast. New York City, and specifically CBGB. Oh, yes, CBGB. This was really something. What punk rock band has not dreamed of playing CBGB? It's just one of the things you gotta do, you know? No explanation necessary. And here we were getting ready to go there. So, okay, I was already in hell because I was sick. I really was sick. I felt horrible after that night on the floor at the Anthrax. Felt god awful. And we had some kind of really vague directions on how to get to CBGB, but we didn't know how to get there. We got lost. We ended up going back and forth over the George Washington Bridge at least twice, maybe 3 times. And it was $2 a throw every single time. You know, you got to remember back home, if you went over a toll bridge, it cost a quarter. You know, here we're in New York City and it's $2 to go over the bridge over to Jersey every single time. And so we ended up in Jersey trying to get to New York City. We didn't know anything. We just kind of knew that okay, New York was there and I guess New Jersey is here, and we just paid $2 again to go look at New York City from over here when we want to be over there. It was frustrating as HE double toothpicks, kids. And so a couple of times, you know, we'd drive around, we'd get back into New York City, find a payphone, call CBGB, because that's what you had to do, find a payphone. And I also seem to remember that payphones in New York City were a quarter, whereas at home they were a dime. You know, you can see what we were up against. We were being nickeled and dimed literally to death. The tolls are not 25 cents, they're $2. The phone calls are not a dime, they're a quarter. A hamburger is not 40 cents, it's 90 cents. I mean, I personally was losing my mind. I'm sick, I'm trying to get to CBGB. We call them, and again, much to their credit, you got to give credit where it's due. Each time we called, there's somebody picked up, and we could hear, you know, bands blasting away in the background. I guess they were sound checking, and the person answering would like be shouting directions over the din. No, you have to go down the FDR Drive and get off at Houston Street and make a right at Houston and then make a left onto Bowery, and we're right there. And I could barely hear them, and I didn't know what they were talking about. I didn't know what an FDR Drive was, or you know, I didn't know any of this stuff. So I'm sure after we'd called them a few times, they were either very amused by us or very sick of us. But we did eventually get to CBGB after driving back and forth across the George Washington Bridge. And who even knows where else we drove in New York trying to find this damn place. Finally get there, and it's like, whoa. Yeah, CBGB, we're here. Wow, this is cool. Gotta tell you, CBGB was indeed in a very hairy neighborhood at the time. Oh yes, the Lower East Side in the mid-'80s probably wasn't as hellacious and completely bombed out as it was in the mid-'70s to the late '70s, but it was still pretty bad down there. It was still pretty grimy. There was a lot of grit down there in the Lower East Side. So, you know, we, of course, being young, naive, stupid, and green, were like little more intimidated than we would have been anyway, being in this very, very edgy neighborhood. You know, it was like we didn't feel safe walking down the street. We didn't want to park the car on the street, which really was probably sensible. You know, I had my car broken into more than once at CBGB in later years after that. So, you know, don't park on the street. It's safe to walk around here. What's going on? Who are these people? Where are we? I don't know. But we did eventually do the load in and get into the show and get ready to play. And the CB shows were great. They went really well. There were a bunch of people that we knew from Florida who came out to the show because New York City was like the big magnet. There were two magnets. If you lived in Florida and you wanted to get the hell out, which a lot of people did, you either went to Atlanta or New York City. Those were like the two meccas for people who needed to escape New York. And a lot of people ended up in New York. And so we had, Ted from Open Books and Records came out, Chicken John came out, Mark Rentzer came out, a few other people came out. And it was neat because we played CBGB on a Sunday to a room with a lot of people in it. It wasn't, when we played, I think we went on first each day. It certainly wasn't packed out, but there was a pretty good, decent, respectable crowd. We played well. We went over well. It was cool. It was really neat. And it sounded great. Like CB's is still to this day is one of the better sounding rooms I've ever played in New York City or anywhere else. They always had a top shelf PA with monitors, and the sound crew always knew what they were doing. So playing CB's was definitely worth it. It was good. And let's see, my main man Sean Fairweather, who's in DC right now, hello, says, had to be better than sleeping on the CB's floor and bathroom. Sleeping on the Anthrax floor, I'm sure, was probably at least as bad as sleeping on the CB's floor. Because the Anthrax floor, I remember, was carpeted. And there's no way you're going to clean a carpet in a room like the Anthrax. Whereas the CB's floor was bare. And you could at least maybe sweep it every couple of years or mop it once every decade or so. You at least had that. But a carpet at the Anthrax? Forget it, dude. Forget it. That was like years of accumulated punk rock grime. And I was laying my dainty little head right on it. Oy vey. And as far as the CBGB bathrooms, I would like to give my opinion on the CBGB bathrooms. The CBGB bathrooms, maybe by 1985, they were not as horrific as they used to be. I honestly never thought the CBGB bathrooms were that bad. I really didn't. I mean, yes, they were punk rock. Yes, they were covered in graffiti. No, the toilet didn't have a stall. So it's just the throne is sitting right there in the middle of the room. That's kind of disconcerting. But it really wasn't any worse than your average punk rock venue bathroom. My vote for worst ever punk rock venue bathroom is one that I at least have to take partial responsibility for, and that is Churchill's Hideaway in Miami, Florida. And I can't speak. Actually, I can qualify that a little bit. There are, I don't know actually how many bathrooms there are at Churchill's, but there's one particular set of bathrooms. Like if you're in the main room at Churchill's, and you go to the very back to the left, there's a pair of bathrooms. Holy smoke! And I love Churchill's. I booked the first show there ever. Broken Talent was going to headline. And God bless the staff at Churchill's. Rat bastard, I love you. You're a good dude. But holy smoke, the bathrooms at Churchill's are the worst. I'm saying it now. I'm saying it with love. Simply stating a fact. They're the worst. I will not elaborate any further. Anyway, we played CB the first day. And once again, thanks to the good graces of Johnny Stiff. He was with the Freeze, who I absolutely adore to this day because I had the Boston Not LA compilation. And the Freeze, I think, are maybe the best band on that comp. Fucking love the Freeze. I was chuffed to find out that we were actually going to open for the Freeze. And they were great. They were really, really good. And of course, also on the bill were Mental Abuse, semi-legendary New York hardcore band, and the Crumbsuckers. Neither of whom I knew, never heard of those bands at the time, but they were both good, got the job done, rocked out, and we got to open for the Freeze. And that was nice. So, we hung out with our friends, we went over pretty well. I can't remember if it was the first CBGB show or the second CBGB show where we legendarily sat on the edge of the stage and went through the box of Blood Slut records that we had, because the record was out. This was our merch. We had Blood Slut records. We had a box of them. But we had gotten a number of complaints that the records were warped and unplayable because we used the cheapest possible pressing plant and we got what we paid for. So we decided that we were going to go and weed out all the bad warped copies. And as I remember it now, it was actually the second night we did that. So the second day at CB's, the next weekend, we sat on the edge of the stage and went through every copy of Blood Slut that we had, and we pulled out every single one of them and looked at them, and every one that was really warped, we pulled aside and we made a big stack of the records. And during our set, we threw them out to the crowd. And for the entire rest of our set, those records came back at us. Sometimes intact, sometimes in pieces. But it was a veritable blizzard of vinyl for the remainder of our set, the second time we played CBGB. That was actually really funny. I got a kick out of that. And that's one reason why these things are so rare now, because we pressed 300, we pressed 500 of them, out of which about 150 or so were all warped and unplayable. And of those 150, we tossed out who knows how many to the crowd at CB's, and they ended up as confetti during our set. New York City plays rough, man. You gotta, and if you can't take it, don't go there. We learned that kind of the hard way. We were never really hassled. We didn't really have any problems, but it was really obvious that New York played by a slightly tougher set of rules than most other places. Regardless of that, we had a great show. We actually got paid, and it was cool. So once again, Johnny Stiff, if you're out there, thank you so much for giving us a really good New York City experience. After that, it got a little bit tricky because I had a place to stay. I was going to stay with Ted from Open Books and Records and his GF at the time, Nancy. And they had a place on 11th Street in New York, but it was typically itsy bitsy, teensy weensy little apartment, and there were already 3 people living there. So they had about room for one more person to sleep on the sofa, and since they knew me and didn't know the other guys, it was going to be me. I have no doubt they would have put everybody up, but there just wasn't room. So now Shane, who is tuned in right now, can hopefully shed some light on what happened with him and Santo and Mark. The story I heard is that they ended up meeting some girls who took them back to a WNYU dorm. And again, Shane can elaborate on this better than I can probably, but just to set it up, apparently these girls were really excited to have a rock band stay with them. But once they actually saw how broke and starving and scraggly and frowsy Broken Talent really was, they ended up trying to hand those guys off to other girls in the dorm. And the girls were initially excited about having a rock band, but once the reality came and there was no money and there was no glamour and no favors, they got the heave-ho. So the story I heard was of Mark and Santo and Shane like going from one dorm room to another all night, just trying to find somebody who would just let them sleep there. Shane, if I'm wrong, please correct me. I want to hear the story. So I had a place to stay. Those guys were kind of on their own. We had a week between shows because Johnny Stiff, again, booked us for a second Sunday, which was great. We sort of had a gig lined up for Gerd's Folk City on the Wednesday between the two CB's matinees. Santo tried to set that one up with this band called the Raunch Hands, but for whatever reason it didn't pan out. So we were in New York on our own for a week, and personally, I thought it was fantastic. I loved it. I had the time of my life. I mean, yes, I was broke. Yes, I was starving, but I at least had a place to stay, and I was able to leave in the morning and just vagabond all over New York for an entire week. I walked everywhere that I possibly could. And that's when I really fell in love with New York City. I mean, yes, there were bums everywhere. Yes, everywhere smelled like stale piss. Yes, it was hairy and dangerous in parts, but it was New York. Enough said. And I was able to sample New York pizza for the first time and, just see things. It was really great. So I loved it. And the week went by, finally, and we reconvened at CB's for the second CBGB matinee. And this was the one with Token Entry, Cro-Mags, and Iron Fist. Iron Fist were from Minneapolis, and they were more of like a Motorhead style punk rock band, as you might guess from the name, Iron Fist. I thought they were really good. They were really good. They were tight. They were really loud. The Cro-Mags and Token Entry, same deal. I'd never heard of them. I knew nothing about these bands. The only thing I remember about Token Entry was their bass drum had the big green arrow that you used to see in the subways that would direct you hither and yon. The big green round circle with the white arrow pointing. They had that on their kick drum, and I thought that was pretty striking. And the only thing I remember about the Cro-Mags was that when we were playing our set, Harley and all of his friends were in the crowd just like, go home, you faggots, go back to Florida, you long hairs, you freaks, fuck you, just really letting us have it. I don't know if they were serious or not. For some reason, I didn't take it personally, and as you might have guessed by now, I took an awful lot of things personally back then. I was very thin-skinned, but I don't know. Somehow getting razzed by the Cro-Mags didn't really bother me too much. I didn't even know who they were really. I don't remember their set. I don't remember anything about them, but I remember Iron Fist because I really liked them, and don't know if they ever released a record. They sort of came and went. Iron Fist, if you're out there, get in touch. I'd love to hear from you. If anybody on the internet research team knows if Iron Fist ever released anything, let me know. I want to know, yo, about the Iron Fist. Yeah, man. We got interviewed at the CBGB show, which was really cool by this for the very loyal, wonderful Bullshit Monthly magazine, run by Mike Bullshit, who later went on to be the lead singer of Go! Exclamation mark, a fine late 80s, early 90s New York hardcore band. He actually interviewed us, and there's a picture, hopefully you guys can see it with my famous cheap camera, a picture of the Freeze at CBGB. And I've got the page with Broken Talent somewhere. I don't know if I have it here in my little pile of props, but they did interview us, and there are some photos, and it's pretty cool. Now, other things I mentioned about New York City, let's address them, shall we? Let's see, everything's expensive, the scene. I didn't like, at the time, the skinheads. Oh, we went to see the Bad Brains reunion gig. Marky and Santa thought they ripped, but I thought they ripped off. Let me explain. This was, at the time, a very big deal. The Bad Brains, the Bad Brains is a soap opera nonpareil, constantly breaking up and reforming, and lineup changes, and lead singers, and drummers, and whatever. At this time, the Bad Brains, as I knew it and understood it, had broken up and were now reforming, I believe, for the first time. In fact, according to Bullshit Monthly, HR had released his first EP, the It's About Love record. So the Bad Brains had already broken up. HR and Earl had done their EP, and it didn't work out, whatever, and now all of a sudden the Bad Brains are coming back, playing a couple nights at the Rock Hotel in New York City, and we just happened to be present for the event. Now, remembering that we're from Florida, and to see a band of the caliber of Bad Brains was almost impossible. Yeah, we had a lot of good, a lot of good touring punk and hardcore bands did come to South Florida, but by no means did all of them. And the Bad Brains were already infamous for constantly canceling shows or no-showing. I remember specifically that the Bad Brains were going to play at Flynn's, and they canceled like last minute. And I'm pretty sure that was before Broken Talent went on tour. So the Bad Brains already had a couple of no-shows under their belt by the time we got to New York and heard that they were playing a reunion show. So this was a big deal that we were there, could actually see them. And the show, $10. Once again, it's New York City. We were used to paying $5, $3, $2. I mean, let's look at some of these flyers I've got behind me. How much were we charging for shows? $2 to see Broken Talent at the very first night at Churchill's Hideaway. Dead Kennedys, when we got back, I think that was like a $6 or $7 show. So, all right. 10 to see the Bad Brains. Muy carata, mejito, muy carata. Ay, ay, qué dolor. Ooh, ow, ow, ow. But we had to do it. I had $10 because I always tried to have a couple of dollars in my pocket. As I mentioned before, in the last episode of Tent Talks Tunes, I was the only guy in Broken Talent who had a steady job. So I made sure that when I left, I had a couple of dollars at least. And so I had $10. How the other guys scrounged up $10 each, I'll never guess. Maybe they sold blood. Maybe they did go to day labor. Maybe they did panhandle. Shane, how did you guys get $10 a head to go see the Bad Brains? Where'd that money come from, dude? Enlighten me. Enlighten us. Somehow we all managed to go to the Rock Hotel and pay $10 a head to see the Bad Brains. That was a lot of damn money. It was really cool at first because it was like, as you can imagine, a mob scene. It seemed like a million people there, and it was like all New York City punkers and skinheads and hardcores and you name it. Everybody was out to see the Bad Brains. It was a big deal. And it was New York City, everything was great. I remember one of the apartment buildings that looked down over the road where the Rock Hotel was. There's some cranky old guy who had a big speaker in his window blasting classical music. Like, I'll show them what real music is. Listen to this. And he had some, like, Shostakovich cranked as loud as he could blast it. It was kind of surreal. So we all get into the venue and getting ready for the show. Shane says he didn't go. He hung outside with the punk urchins. That makes sense. Shane did not make it in. He hung outside with the punk urchins. But somehow Mark and Santo were able to cobble up enough jack to get into the show. Okay, so 3 of us got in there. And it's, New York City, packed out. I don't remember who opened. But I do remember that when the Bad Brains hit the stage, it was like electrifying because there they were, the almighty Bad Brains. And like there's a film crew there and like there's all kinds of stuff going on. Big deal, right? So the Bad Brains stroll on stage casually, nonchalantly, tune up a little bit, and they start the first song, which is I. If you don't know the song I by the Bad Brains, you better look it up. That was just like, whoa, they're playing I. They're starting off with I. It was like, it was incredible. It was transcendent. It was bliss. Hardcore punk rock bliss. The song ends after, whatever, 35 seconds, minute and a half long song. It ends. And then HR kicks back and breaks out a spliff and, smokes a little spliff and offers some smoke to the people in the crowd, takes a drink of water. Camera crew readjusts the cameras a little bit. And then they go into the second song, Attitude. Bad Brains doing Attitude. Okay, this is it. We're rocking now, baby. This is happening. Attitude, Bad Brains, New York City. First show back. Oh, my God. Song ends. HR takes a bottle of water, drinks some water, offers some water to the crowd, smokes a little, offers some smoke to the crowd. They readjust the cameras a little bit. Doc tunes up a little bit. And they begin the next song, which is whatever. And they go through the same routine throughout the whole show. All 35 minutes of it. It was like one incredible blast, and then, all right, well, we're just going to fuck around for a few minutes while we fuck around for a few minutes. And it was terrible. It sucked. It was lousy. It was just like so non-rock and roll. I was disillusioned, because I wanted the Bad Brains to, come out and pummel me with their music, and it didn't pummel. It was boring. And it was only 35 minutes long for $10. So that was kind of a letdown. The irony is I did see the Bad Brains later on. I saw them in 1988 when they had Taj Singleton on vocals at the Anthrax, of all places, in Connecticut. And they were great, because they paced the set a lot better. Saw them in 91 with Chuck Mosley on vocals at Toad's Place in New Haven, and that was really good. That was surprisingly good. Chuck Mosley was a real good frontman, and they had a whole clutch of new songs they had written with him that were like excellent. Really good reggae songs, really good punk rock songs. None of them ever got recorded as far as I know, which is too bad because they were really good. But the Bad Brains, man, 1985, New York City, original lineup, reunion show. Sucked. It sucked. But hey, I saw it. I can say it happened. I can say, been there, done that. So anyway, that's what New York City was all about. And I know that at some point, Shane and Mark and Santo, as mentioned in my diary, did end up with Elizabeth and Carmen, who were from Florida and had a really, really cool sort of metal band called PMS, all-female metal band. They rocked. They rocked hard. I remember going to pick up the Broken Talent guys at the PMS apartment, wherever it was. And this was after the second CBGB show, which was a Sunday. So we're there on Monday, and we had a gig in Pittsburgh to play on Tuesday. But as was typical of our entire stay, we had nothing to do and nowhere to go in between New York and Pittsburgh. So we're, I got there, we're all kind of hanging out, and we sort of hinted around that maybe it would be nice if we could stay with them one more night before going to Pittsburgh. But they were kind of like, well, yeah. They were not taking the bait. They did not say, oh, yes, sure, we'd love to have you stay in our cramped, tiny little New York City apartment one more night. We would just love that. They were kind of like, well, yeah, sorry you guys have to go, So that's when we ended up piling into the 72 Dodge and trundling off to Pittsburgh. And oh, my stars and garters, I have just yammered on for 54 minutes about Broken Talent's adventures in New York City. And we still have Pittsburgh to talk about, and Marion, Virginia to talk about, and starvation. And, well, I'm not going to be the spoiler. I thought that I had a 1-hour episode of Tent Talks Tunes devoted to the Broken Talent Barely Alive 85 tour. But I was wrong. It looks like I've got a minimum of 3 hours, because an hour is enough. It's enough. My voice is tired. It's wearing out. Harry the cat, he's sleeping peacefully on the sofa over yonder. But I know he's tired of hearing me talk. He's tired. In his little kitty dreams, he just keeps hearing my voice over and over again. He's tired. So let's give Harry a break. We'll call a timeout right now. And next week, more stories of broken talent, barely alive, 85, and some of the completely bizarre, surreal situations a band can find themselves in. You thought that meeting a Mae West wannabe face-to-face in Brooklyn was something? Wait to hear about Pittsburgh. Oh, boy. So we're going to close the book on this week's episode of Tent Talks Tunes. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. If you want to hear some broken talent, as I've mentioned so often, go to Discogs, my label, TPOS. Look up Broken Talent. We have this anthology cassette and CD available. It's got a lot of really groovy stuff on it. And I'm working right now on a volume 2 for this, because it turns out that there might be some demand for more Broken Talent. So I've been going through the vaults and combing through the tapes and finding some surprisingly good stuff that I didn't really know we had. So Broken Talent, Discogs, eBay, Bandcamp, Broken Talent, Bandcamp. Find us, look us up, see and hear what all the fuss was about that would make us go to New York City and Albany and Chapel Hill and Atlanta and Pittsburgh and Marion, Virginia, and suffer the way we did for that kind of music. What did we suffer for? Give it a listen. That's your homework assignment. Mike McGonigal, again, I'm going to say, the publisher of Chemical Imbalance. I order you to get well soon. That's your mandate. Get well soon. And yeah, thanks for tuning in, everybody. I really appreciate it. I really love getting a chance to spin these yarns and get the history out there onto our permanent record on Facebook and YouTube for eternity. So I do intend to be back in 167 hours' time. Until then, this is Malcolm Tent saying so long from the Nutmeg State.